श्रीमद् सद्गुरु सरकार की, श्रीमद् युगल सरकार की। चेतो दर्पण मार्जनम् भवमहा दावाग्निर्वापनम् श्रेयः कैरवचन्द्रिका वितरणम् विद्यावधूजीवनम् आनन्दाम्बुधिवर्धनम् प्रतिपदम् पूर्णामृतास्वादनम् सर्वात्मस्नपनं परं विजयते श्रीकृष्ण संकीर्तनम्। ध्यानमूलम् गुरोर्मूर्तिः पूजामूलम् गुरोर्पदम् मन्त्रमूलम् गुरोर्वाक्यम् भक्तिमूलम् कृपा। यदु नन्दन प्राण पीरीति तुम बीनु जियत बहुत दीन बीते तुम बीनु जियत बहुत दीन बीते। यो ब्रह्माणं विदधाति पूर्वं यो वै वेदांश्च प्रहिणोति तस्मै तग्वंह देवमात्मबुद्धिप्रकाशम् मुमुक्षुर्वै शरणमहं प्रपद्ये। We'll chant for a few minutes. Bhajo Giridhar Govind Gopala.
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 श्रीमद् सद्गुरु सरकार की
जय।
श्रीमद् युगल सरकार की
जय।
हे अशरण शरण, तुम्हारी कृपा के बिना तुम्हें कोई जान भी तो नहीं सकता। O refuge of destitutes, who can know you without your grace? अविद्या की ग्रंथि ते गोविंद राधे, उर्झा है जीव उसे कृपा ते सुरझा दे। राधा गोविंद गीत। अविद्या की ग्रंथि ते उर्झा जीव, the soul, the individual soul, is bound by or tied in the knots of ignorance. What do I mean by ignorance? Ignorance in the form of the misidentification with this body. So, oh Shri Krishna, please untie all those knots of ignorance of the soul with your divine grace, with your mercy. He asharan sharan. Asharana Sharana means refuge of destitutes. It is one of the uncountable virtues, attributes of Shri Krishna. This attribute of Shri Krishna is demonstrated in the life of Draupadi. When Draupadi was dragged into the assembly by Dushasan to disrobe her of her clothes, to strip her of her clothes, she was faced with a dreadful situation. Only the heart of the experiencer can understand how terrible such an act would have been for an Indian woman of her status and respectability. So Draupadi, having hope in her heart that her 5 husbands, Yudhishthir, Arjun, Bhim, Nakul, and Sahadev, will protect her. But because they had lost her while gambling, they sat with their heads down. And so the strength that she had in her heart, it went away. That her husbands will protect her. And then she looked to the great men in the court, Bhishma Pitamaha, Dronacharya, and even they offered no help. So she looked around, hoping that someone would volunteer, but no one did. In the end, she decided that she was going to protect herself by clenching her sari between her teeth. But what was the strength of Draupadi in comparison to Dushasan, who had the strength of 10,000 elephants? Shri Krishna was in Dwarika and he was having his meal. He had one morsel in his mouth and he stopped eating. He had another morsel in his hand. He did not put it in his mouth, and nor did he put it on the plate. So seeing such an appearance of Sri Krishna, Rukmini asked, "What is the matter?" So Sri Krishna said, "One of my devotees is in trouble." So Rukmini said, "You are Bhakta Vatsal. You have affection for your dear souls and devotees, so protect." So Sri Krishna said, "I have a law, and against that, I do not act." What is it? Ananyas chintayanto mam ye janah paryupasate tesham nityabhiyuktanam yogakshemam vahamyaham. Gita. So Sri Krishna said, I only take total, complete responsibility of the soul who fully surrenders to me. At this time, this devotee has faith in her own strength. But as soon as Dushasan pulled Draupadi's sari, it was jerked loose from between her teeth. And in that moment, Draupadi, she renounced faith in her own strength. And she, with her full heart, she called Sri Krishna, Ha Nath Dwarika Vasan. And Sri Krishna manifested himself. Ambara Avatar, it's called. He manifested himself in every fiber of Draupadi's sari. And of course, Dushasan kept pulling it endlessly until he gave up. So Draupadi, she took refuge in Sri Krishna. She abandoned faith in her own ability to protect herself and took refuge in Sri Krishna. And so Sri Krishna is a Sharana, refuge of the downtrodden, the distraught, fallen, humble souls. Now, this illustration or this story of Draupadi, I shared only as an illustration of what a Sharana actually depicting that attribute or that quality of Sri Krishna. So this is how far we should contemplate or think about this, not beyond that. Because Sri Maharaji, his teachings to us, Maharaji advocates Nishkam Bhakti, selflessness, that we never desire anything from Sri Krishna. We should never ever entertain the thought of desiring anything from Sri Krishna. Because by not desiring anything, we get everything. There are 3 classifications of saints or souls who attain divine love. Draupadi falls in the category of Sadharani Rati. Means she desired her own happiness as only. She desired her own. Of course, it is a state, it is the stage of divine love, it's an attainment of divine love. But Sri Maharaji strives to take us to the highest, to the ultimate experience of divinity. Now, for an aspiring devotee on the path of devotion, on the path of bhakti, like you and I, until our ultimate goal is fully accomplished or fully realized, until we realize Shri Krishna in front of us, until God realization, Asharana for us aspiring devotee souls is our Guru. Our Guru serves us. He is our refuge, refuge of us destitutes. He is our sole refuge on this path until we reach perfection. When we find ourselves saved from crisis, any kind of crisis, calamity, we are overcome with the realization, a feeling of gratefulness, a feeling of humility. We feel overwhelmed, and we immediately realize that we have that divine protection over us. We are protected. We are heard saying, "Oh, Sri Maharaji protected me." If it weren't for Sri Maharaji, who knows what could have happened? We are heard saying this. But as soon as we get comfortable, that feeling, that tension, when we find ourselves out of those feelings of distress, what happens? We forget. And we turn around and seek refuge in other people around us. So that feeling is momentary. We have to retain it always and all the time through the practice of sadhana. Because as individuals on this path, our identity as devotees, we identify with Sri Maharaji and Sri Maharaji's grace. Not only in moments of distress, but also in moments of joy. In every moment, in every situation, no matter where we are, what we're doing, it doesn't matter what the circumstances are. We belong to Sri Maharaji, and so we identify with him. He is our sole refuge. It's the feeling within us that we carry, we feel. It doesn't matter whom we're interacting with in the world, we're traveling through an airport, it doesn't matter. That should be our conviction as devotees. Yes. So, speaking of Sri Maharaji as our sole refuge, once in Barsana, an older devotee, his name was Bhagat Baba, he was in the ashram in Rangili Mahal, didn't have a room of his own, so he used to stay in Rangili Mahal in the prayer hall. And so one day, around 11 o'clock, 11:30 or so, Sri Maharaji used to come out and give darshan to the devotees. So some of us were there, and so he came up to Sri Maharaji, and he asked Sri Maharaji, "Maharaji, I have high blood pressure, is what I'm told by the doctor, and so if I start taking medication, I would have to take it for my whole life. So should I take medication?" In all humility, with a feeling of just submission, very humble, and very sincerely asking Maharaji. And Maharaji said, yes, you should take. And then Shri Maharaji reached in his pocket and gave him money. He gave him 200 rupees. And just from that gesture of Shri Maharaji, he was so deeply humbled. His heart melted. Because he didn't have any money. So, and he said something to Shri Maharaji. He said, सब आपको देते हैं, केवल मैं लेता हूँ. He said to Shri Maharaji that everyone gives to you, they offer to you, and I'm the only one that takes from you. Our refuge. When Shri Maharaji came to Austin, visited Barsana Dham in 2005, a family from Canada, they were leaving, and so they were late for their flight, and so without saying goodbye to Shri Maharaji, they left. And soon after they had turned on Mopek, their car broke down in an area where there were no houses or businesses. They didn't have a way to call for help. But finally, a car pulled up. And a nice man walked up to help them. So he got the motor started, but by then they were already late for their flight. And so at that point they had no choice but to return, to come back to the ashram. So when they came back and they went to meet Shri Maharaji, and Maharaji said, you did not even meet me before you left. And so then they told Maharaji about this incident that had transpired and how this man helped them. And so Maharaji said, did you notice a freckle on his cheek, pointing to his freckle? Our refuge. And not only that, Shri Maharaji is the refuge of all the souls in the world. Once a devotee family was expecting Shri Maharaji at their house for the first time in Lucknow. And so what happened was, Maharaji was coming by train, and so when they came to the train station to receive Shri Maharaji, they found out that Shri Maharaji's trip was canceled, that he wasn't arriving that day. So they went back to the train station the following day, only to find out that once again, Shri Maharaji's program got canceled. So what used to happen was, the housemaid of that family, Kamwali, she used to beg them, please take me along. Take me along, because she also wanted to receive Shri Maharaji at the train station. So she said, please take me along. But you would leave her at home, and the rest of the people would go to the train station. And so she used to say to them, just watch and see. Because you're not taking me, Maharaji will not come. Shri Maharaji will not come. And so this happened 3 days in a row, 3 consecutive days. And so on the 4th day, when they brought her along, then Maharaji came. So when Maharaji was told what had happened, he laughed. So he is our refuge, Asharana Sharana. Now let us understand the philosophy imbued within these lines. So the power, Maya, it is so powerful. It is so powerful that by no other means can anyone overcome Maya or conquer Maya except through the grace of God. It is only through the grace. And this grace is experienced by a surrendered soul. Shri Krishna tells in the Gita, Daivi yesha gunamayi mama maya duratyaya mameva ye prapadyante maya metam taranti te. Only the souls, or only the one who will surrender to me, Eva means me alone, can transcend Maya. Likewise, are the other scriptures as well describe, Tumhari kripa tumhi raghunandan janat bhagat bhagat urchandan. So that fortunate soul upon whom God bestows His divine grace, only that soul with the grace, so that soul experiencing God means what? They experience Shri Krishna with Shri Krishna's power. They can visualize Him, experience His closeness, hear Him, talk to Him, touch Him. How? Only when Shri Krishna bestows His divine intellect on that soul with His divine grace. Only then. So dasi raghubir ki samujhe mithya sopi chutai na ram kripa binu nath kahu padaropi. Ramayana. That just like some philosophers think that Maya is fake, it is actually not fake. It is the maid servant of God. And it is only when we receive the grace of God that we can be released from Maya. Purushana punsakanari nar jeev chara char koya sarva bhava bhaj kapat taji mohi param priya soi. Ramayana. That it doesn't matter which class or what kind of soul one is, but if they dedicate exclusively and with emotional feelings, they surrender to God, then such a soul is most dear to God. Nayamatma pravachanena labhyo na medhaya na bahuna shutena yamevaisha vrinute tena labhyastasyesha atma. So, the Katha Upanishad describes that God is not a subject of study, debate, intellectual application. He cannot be known by hearing either. He can only be known with His grace. So in essence, grace is the only means by which we can know Shri Krishna, attain Shri Krishna. So the scriptures, to reinforce this fact or this philosophy, the scriptures further tell us that there's no other means, so there's no other way. God is beyond the intellect of even great minds or great personalities. Great personalities. That's why the Vedas, they tell us, Indriyebhyah parahyartha arthebhyascha param manah manasastu para buddhir buddhiratma mahan parah Mahatah param avyaktam avyaktat purushah parah purushan param kinchit sakashtha sa paragatihi. Ved. So more subtle than the senses are the objects of the senses. Even more subtle is the intellect, is the mind. And even more subtle is the intellect. Beyond the intellect is the soul. Beyond the soul is Maya, and beyond Maya is God. So it is not possible to comprehend God with our limited material intellect. This is what the scriptures are telling us. Again, the Vedas tell us, Yato vacho nivartante aprapya manasa saha. He is beyond the reach of our intellect. Jag pe khan tum dekhan hare vidhi hari shambhu na chavan hare te un janahi maram tumhara aur ko janahi. So राम स्वरूप तुम्हार वचन अगोचर बुद्धि पर अविगत अकथ अपार नेति नेति नित निगम वद इंद्रियाणि पराण्याहुरिन्द्रियेभ्यः परम मनः मनसस्तु परा बुद्धिर्यो बुद्धेः परतस्तु सः. Gita. So all of these scriptures, they unanimously declare that God is beyond the reach of our intellect. Because if it were possible to reach God with our intellect, what could that mean? It would mean that our intellect is the same, it's equal to God. No, but it is not. And yet, the scriptures tell us that souls, many souls, have reached God. They have experienced His grace. Vedahametam purusham mahantam aditya varnam tamasah parastat. The Vedas tell us that souls have dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mamupayanti te Gita. That Shri Krishna can be known, but how? So the Gita says, by surrendering our intellect. By surrendering our intellect. This Buddhi Devi, we have to submit. Yes. So in the devotional period, in the process of sadhana, we're all sadhaks, endeavoring, striving to purify our heart. Yes. So scriptures tell us that we cannot surrender to God directly, and therefore they tell us, Yasya deve para bhaktir yatha deve tatha guru. That devotion to God and devotion to our Guru should be exactly the same, because our Guru is God's grace in form. So the scriptures tell us that we have to surrender to our Guru. Heed the teachings of our Guru. adhere to the teachings of our Guru, yes, that is what we have to do. So, the story of Shabari enlightens us. Shabari, she was a tribal woman who resided, a great devotee who resided in the forest of Dandakaranya in central India during the time or during the descension of Lord Ram. So wandering through the forest, she came upon a beautiful ashram that was inhabited with beautiful birds, a variety of birds and other wildlife. So that part of the forest was known as Matangvan, and it was owned by a sage named Matanga Muni. So upon reaching the ashram, she fell at the feet of the sage and begged him to accept a fallen, sinful, and orphaned woman such as herself in his refuge. And the gracious, all-merciful sage, he took her under his care and imparting the philosophy of divine love devotion. So when the time came for him to depart the world, he called her and gave her instructions. And he told her that you stay here, you continue to stay here in this ashram and serve in this ashram, because one day Lord Ram and his brother Lakshman, they will come. And when you receive his darshan, the purpose of your life will be gratified, will be fulfilled of this human life. So, telling this to Shabari, the sage kindled the fire of devotion in her heart before departing. So every day, according to the wishes of her guru, Shabari was awaiting the arrival of Bhagwan Ram and his brother Lakshman. And every day she cleaned the path leading to the ashram, sprinkled the path with beautiful flower petals and all. And the thought was uppermost in her heart, in her mind, that any moment the Lord can arrive. And so she had such unwavering faith in the words of her guru that every day she was spending in the loving remembrance, day and night, of Bhagwan Ram, and carrying out meticulous preparations in anticipation of the Lord, fetching the kandamul. And as time went by, her faith in her guru grew stronger and stronger. Finally, that auspicious day came. So, in search of his eternal consort, of his beloved Sita, the Lord Bhagwan Ram with his brother Lakshman, they arrived. They arrived there, and so they were wonderstruck when they saw the beautiful surroundings. And because Shabari, she was a great ascetic and a great yogini. And so, brimming with love and joy in her heart, she, with folded hands, greeted Bhagwan Ram and Lakshman and fell at their feet in surrender. Her eyes were transfixed on the sublime beauty of Bhagwan Ram, his beautiful blue body, strong shoulders, and his long matted hair with this beautiful wildflower garland. And of course, with his contrasting fair-complexioned brother Lakshman, fulfilled her long cherished dream to the hilt. She was ecstatic. सरसिज लोचन बाहु बिसाला जटा मुकुट सिर उर बनमाला. So she fell at the feet of the Lord, and overcome with the depth of emotions, Bhagwan Ram lifted her, and he said to her that, "Oh, dearest one, you have served your Guru with all your heart, and so today your devotion has reached fruition. Your devotion to your Guru and your heartfelt seva." So hearing such benevolent words of Bhagwan Ram, Shabri, she said, "Oh, Raghunandan, the son of the Raghu dynasty, by having your darshan today, the purpose of this human life, my devotion has fructified. And I know for sure that with you placing your lotus feet in this ashram, that my tapasya, my penance, has succeeded, and that I will reach your divine abode." So, Shabri became an example of Guru Bhakti. She offered her heart and mind in the seva of her Guru. She followed his agya. And what was the outcome of that? What was the outcome of that? She reached her goal of divine love realization. The Lord walked into her life and gave her darshan, as was told to her by her Guru. By her Guru. Yes. That is what happened. So the point is that doing sadhana under the direct guidance and inspiration of a God-realized personality is what will inspire Sri Krishna's grace. And when we receive that grace, we will receive our intellect, our mind, our senses, and everything will become divinized. So in other words, we will experience Sri Krishna with Sri Krishna's divine intellect only when he bestows it upon us with the grace of Guru. Through the Guru, we will receive it. Yes. So, this is the essence of devotion to one's Guru. Sometimes naive people wonder, wouldn't it be so easy and so good if God were to just manifest in front of us and we could just see him and become enchanted and fascinated by his beauty, and that way we wouldn't have to do any sadhana? It would be so easy, wouldn't it? Well, no. Why? Because we're not qualified. Unless we qualify ourselves, we cannot expect to be experiencing even a drop of divinity. Not at all. So people argue that, oh, but saints, they experience God, and so what's wrong? Why can't we? They were fascinated by God's divine darshan. Murati madhur manohar dekhi bhayu videha videha visekhi. When King Janak, when he saw the divine beauty of Bhagwan Ram, he was so attracted and enticed by the divine beauty of Bhagwan Ram. Yes. And so we can also know, because we have a material mind, intellect, and body. And of course, as it is described in the Bhagavatam, that when Shri Krishna went to the assembly of Kans, Mallanam Ashanirninam Naravara Strinam Smaro Murtiman Gopanam Svajano Satam Kshitibhujam Shasta Swapitroha Shishu Mrityurbhoj Pater Virad Vidusham Tatvam Param Yoginam Vrishninam Paradevate Vidito Rangam Gata Sagraja. Bhagavatam. When Shri Krishna went, he was only 11 years old. Everyone that was there in that assembly, they experienced, upon perceiving Shri Krishna, everyone had their own individual experience. So the wrestlers, what did they experience? That this boy, his body is not made of flesh and blood. No. Then, looks like he was produced, his body is made of lightning bolt. That's how strong he is. Average people saw Shri Krishna, and what did they conclude? Oh, this boy, you know what? He has great human qualities. Yes. And when the women saw, oh wow, he's so beautiful. He's so handsome. We have heard about Kamdev, but I don't think Kamdev compares at all. This boy is so beautiful. When Shri Krishna's friends, the Gwalbals, saw him, this is our childhood friend, Kanua. And when the wicked king saw Shri Krishna, he is our stern ruler. When his parents, mother and father, he is our loving baby. Yes. And when Kans saw Shri Krishna, he is the death of the god of death, Yamraj. He's death personified. Yes. And when the evil-minded people, they saw him, they trembled with fear. And they saw Shri Krishna as a universally gigantic form with thousands of faces and arms and legs and with like these flares of fire emanating from every mouth. That is how they perceived him. And the yogis, they saw him as absolute truth, Param Tattva. And the Yadavs, they saw him as their family. So, everyone perceived Shri Krishna in their own way, according to the quality of the heart, their own temperament, and the purity of their heart. That is how they perceived. So, if God were to manifest in front of us, how would we perceive him? Of course, with our limited mind, intellect, and senses. Everything is material, and so Shri Krishna will appear as a material personality to us. That is what will happen. And as Sri Maharaji gives the example of a magnet, and if you put needles around a magnet, then the needle that is most pure, has more iron in it, it will be drawn immediately to the magnet. But the one that has more impurity, it will be drawn, but slowly. It will take time. And the needle that has more impurity, it will not even budge. So this is what happens during the descension of God and saints. That those souls whose heart is pure. They are attracted to that magnet in the form of God and saints. And those whose hearts are impure, whatever is the quality of their heart, they perceive Sri Krishna as a loafer, a vagabond. Why? Because they themselves are a loafer. They're wearing those spectacles, right? Yes, so that is what they see. They're wearing dark. They see dark. There are three qualities of Maya. Ajamekam, Lohita, Shukla, Krishnam. So, that is, those three qualities of Maya are always revolving in our consciousness. So depending on the environment that we're exposing ourselves to and associating with, accordingly, we develop those qualities. And so when we come into contact with divinity in the form of God or saints, then our perception is also according to the quality of our heart, of our consciousness. That is why during the descension of Bhagwan Ram, a dhobi, a washerman, he became completely doubtful about the purity of Mother Sita. And he said that how could she be at an enemy's house, in the house of an enemy, Ravan, and remain pure and chaste? He could not accept that that was possible. So the point is that it really depends on the quality of our heart. And according to that, we feel an attraction to God, an attraction to God during His descension, because we have been, over the course of our uncountable lifetimes and through the countless descensions of God and saints, yes, we have been around. But when we saw Bhagwan Ram, how did we perceive him? Oh, well, he's beautiful, for sure. Yeah, he's good. He's good looking. He's capable, too. But, yeah, did we have faith? Oh, no. We judged him otherwise. That's what we did. And then the saints, when they saw Bhagwan Ram, Chidanandamaya Deha Tumhari, they saw him in his full divine glory. That is how they perceived him. So, it is really up to us and how our patra. It's just like if we go to, if suppose there's a well, we go and we dip a cup. What do we get? A cup of water. You dip a pot in it, you get a pot of water. You put a drum in it, you get a drum of water. So it's really depends on the quality of our own heart. And accordingly, we derive benefit. And some people, in fact, they commit more transgressions in the presence of saints. They commit more sins and transgressions because they cannot tolerate their evil or their impiety or their impious hearts. They rebel. They rebel against the purity and the pure presence and the grace of that saint. Many years ago, once this man came and Swamiji was with us, and so this man asked him, he was very arrogant, obviously, it was pretty obvious. So he asked, "What do you do all day?" He asked Swamiji. Swamiji said, "Well, I eat, I drink, and I sleep." The point is that people, they use their puny faulty, defective intellect to judge a saint. And what is their measure? Their own sinful heart. That is their scale. That's it. So it's almost like a child who's trying to test the knowledge of a professor. But how can he? He doesn't even know A, B, C, D. He doesn't even know the alphabets. And yet he's trying to judge the qualification. We don't even know our own people. People that we live with under the same roof day in and day out. We don't even know what's going on in their heads and in their mind. No, we don't. And yet, we have the audacity to judge and pass judgment on saints and divine personalities. So the point is that grace is our only hope. It is only with grace. And to receive that grace, we have to do sadhana. And to do sadhana, we need the association of saints, of a saint who can guide us on the path of bhakti and devotion. So this verse of the prayer, He Asharana Sharana, O refuge of destitutes, who can know you without your grace? Shrimat Sadguru Sarkar ki, Shrimat Yugal Sarkar ki, Jai Jai Shri Radhe, Jai Jai Shri Radhe, Jai Jai Shri Radhe.